ma'am. So we are the Chapter 6 reporters, and I am Esber, and we are 3 reporters in this chapter. So the topic of this chapter is about the development of effective assessment tools. And our we have here our intended learning outcomes. So at the end of this chapter, we should be able to develop instruments for assessing effective learning. So cognitive and affective domains are inseparable aspects of a learner. Each completes one another with respect to learner's important domain. So proper ongoing assessment of the affective domain students' attitudes, values, disposition, and ethical perspective is essential in efforts to improve academic achievement in the quality of the educational experience provided. So in this chapter, development of effective assessment tools will be discussed, and at the end of the chapter, we will be able to craft proper effective assessment tools. So here first, the number one, methods of assessing effective targets. So we have here the 3 feasible methods of assessing effective traits in this position. We have here the teacher observations, the student self-report, and of course the peer ratings. So now, since affective traits are not directly observable, they must be deduced from a behavior of what students say about themselves and others. So there is a instead own observation in students. Student self-reports are mostly used. So there are 3 considerations in assessing affect. So there are 3. These are, first, the emotions and feelings change quickly, most especially for young children and during early adolescence. So ang ibig sabihin nito that to obtain a valid indication of an individual student's emotion or feelings, kailangan natin mag-conduct ng several assessment over a period of time, because a single assessment is not enough to see what the prevalent effect is. So it needs to be repeated over several times. So gawin natin siya ng maraming beses. Next is use of varied approaches in measuring the same effective trait as possible. So which means it's better not to rely on a single method. So hindi lang dapat sa isa because of a limitation inherent in that method. So halimbawa, student self-report may be fake, hence may significantly meddle in the results. However, if the self-report are consistent with the teacher's observation, then a stronger case can be made. That is the second one. So the third one, decide what type of data or results are needed. Is it individual or the group data? So consideration of what the purpose of the assessment is will influence the methods that must be used. Because for reporting or giving feedback to parents or interested individuals about the learners, individual students' information is necessary. So the records of the students, because to verify judgment made is appropriate. So those records is very important talaga na may panghahawakang records yung mga teachers, because if the assessment is to improve instruction, the results for group or whole class is more proper to use. So this is one of the usefulness of the assessment. It is more reliable to use anonymous students' self-report. Now let's proceed to the teacher's observation. So now teacher observation is one of the essential tools for formative assessment. However, in this chapter, the emphasis is on how to use this method so that teachers can make more systematic observation to record students' behavior that indicates the presence of the targeted affective trait. So using the observations, of course, the first thing to do is to determine in advance how specific behaviors relate to the target. It starts with a vivid definition of the trait, then followed by the list of students' behavior and the actions that corresponds to positive and negative dimensions of the trait. So, and this will they have here to classify those and create a separate list of the positive students' behaviors and another list for the negative students' behavior. So this list, so I have here a table next na slide na ito, there is a table that will serve as the initial or starting point of what will be observed. So contained in the table below are some possible student behaviors indicating positive and negative attitudes towards learning. So here is our students' behavior indicating negative and positive attitudes towards learning. So I'm not going to I'm not going to isa-isahin basahin ito because it will really consume a lot of time. So, yan. Again, there rarely misses class where the positive and negative is frequently absent. Rarely late to class, which is under the positive, and it is frequently tardy under with the negative, and so on and so forth. So, you can take a screenshot, everyone, so that you can have a copy. So, I'm not going to say it na isa-isahin siya. So, now, let's proceed to the positive behaviors are called also as approach behaviors, while the negative is called avoidance behavior. So approach behaviors results in direct, frequent and intense contact. On the other hand, avoidance behaviors result in less direct, less frequent, and less intense contact. So these dimensions are helpful in describing the behaviors that indicate positive and negative attitudes. So after the list behaviors has been developed, the teacher needs to decide whether to use an informal, unstructured observation, or formal one, and structured. So these two types differ in terms of preparation and what is recorded. So number 1.1. So we have here so these two types differ of the preparation what is recorded. We have here the first, the unstructured observation. So unstructured observation may also be used for the purpose of the making summative judgment. So this is normally open-ended, no checklist. Again no checklist or rating scales in use, and everything observed is just simply recorded. So this is normally an open-minded. So in structured observation, it means this is more realistic, because which means teachers can record everything they have observed and are not limited by what is contained in checklist or rating scales. So wala siyang checklist or even a rating scale. So there is no problem if specific behaviors are not displayed and behavior that was not previously listed can be added. So that is the unstructured observation. While we have also the structured observation. So when you say a structured observation is different from the unstructured observation in terms of preparation needed as well as in the observation is recorded. So instructional observation kasi, more time is needed since checklists or rating scores are to be made since it will use to record observation. So the structured observation dito is mayroon na siyang checklist or the rating forms. Unlike dun sa unstructured observation, wala siyang checklist or ratings. So yun yung kaibahan nilang dalawa. So which means that ang dalawang ito, ang kaibahan nila is that structured observation is more flexible but this practical for frequent systematic use. While kung pag-uusapan din natin yung structured observation is structured observation is more formal and efficient for ongoing assessment but requires preparation and might overlook behaviors outside the checklist. So these both are valuable tools for assessing approach, of course, and avoidance behaviors and the choice, dependence, and the context, practice, or the purpose or the practicality for the teachers. So those are the key difference for the two unstructured and structured observation. So we have here below, we have here the next slide, the things that should be considered if teacher observation method will be used to assess effect. So you can read it, everyone, because it will really consume another lot of time. And the determined behaviors to be observed in advance, record students important data at such time and place. So these are the again, as those are the things that should be considered if a teacher's observation methods will be used to assess effect. So there is a conservation report, which is the student's self-report, and that would be tackled by Mr. Engcong. And thank you so much for listening at my part. I hope you understand about it. Thank you and good morning.
Hello, ma'am. I am the reporter 2 in chapter 6, the development of effective assessment tool. Since Renalu discussed the other, I will discuss the student self-report. Student self-report, there are a varied way to express students' affect as a self-report. The most common and direct way is while having a casual conversation or interview. Student can also respond to a written question or survey about themselves or the other students. Students interview. There are different types of communication that a teacher can use with their students, like individual and group interviews, discussion, and casual conversation to assess effect. It is similar to observation, but in her, there is an opportunity that the teacher may have a direct involvement with the students wherein teacher can respond for a better understanding. In personal communication, it allowed the teacher to engage directly, asking questions and responding to gain a deeper insight. Establishing trust is essential, so students feel safe to share their thoughts. Survey questionnaire. The second type under the self-report method is questionnaire and survey. The two types of format using questionnaire and survey are constructed response format and selective response format. When we say constructed response format, it is a type of format question commonly used in assessment and tests. It requires students to provide a written response to a question or prompt together than selecting from a multiple choice option. Example sa constructed response format is essay. Let's In selected response format, there are three ways in implementing the selected response format in assessing effective learning outcomes. These are rating skill, semantic, differential skill, and checklist. The advantage of selected response format is that it assures anonymity. Examples sa selected response format is multiple choice. Then per ratings. Let's proceed sa type of effect that need to be assessed. A general reaction to something or someone can best be gathered through observation. However, if attitude components is to be diagnosed, a self-report will give a better information. Observation can be supported by per ratings method. The target is socially oriented effect. In general reaction method, a method na itong gamitin is observation. Why observation? Because observing a person's behavior allow you to understand their immediate outward emotional response to a situation, person, or event. In diagnosing attitude component is the method we use is self-report. Why self-report is to understand someone's internal thoughts, belief, and feeling about a subject. Direct input is needed. Self-report, like questionnaire or survey, allow individual to express of what they feel or believe. In socially oriented affect, method we use is observing and parenting. Why observing and parenting? For emotions related to a social relationship like teamwork or interpersonal behavior, observation of a group interaction can provide an insight. Pair ratings offer additional perspective by asking colleagues or teammates to evaluate the individual behavior. Let's proceed is in if the information is needed is from group or individual responses. If group response and tendencies are needed, selected response self-report method is suited because it assures anonymity and is easily scored. Example, the self-response or self-report is multiple choice like skill questionnaire. Why selected response method is used? It is because of anonymity. When we say anonymity, it means that a person's identity is kept unknown or hidden through an anonymous respondent. It feels like more comfortable sharing honest opinion when their answers are anonymous, especially in a group settings. The use of information. If the intention of the effective assessment is to utilize the result as a supporting input to grading, the multiply approach is necessary and be mindful of the possibility of having a fake result from self-report and even from peer judgment. When using an effective assessment result for grading, combine methods like observation, self-report, and peer ratings to ensure accuracy, and reliability. Be cautious of bias or fake response in self-report and peer ratings. The choice of method should depend on the context, purpose, and the level of participation. The affective assessment tool. The affective domain encompasses behavior in the terms of attitude, belief, and feeling. Set of attitude, belief, and feeling comprise one's value. There are various assessment tools that can be used to measure an effect. Affective assessment tools are used to measure behavior related to attitude, belief, and feeling which reflect a person's values. These tools help assess how individual person emotionally and how they develop over time. Checklist. When we say checklist, when we say checklist, it is used a specific behavior skill or disposition in students. Checklist is one of the effective formative assessment strategies to monitor a specific skills, behavior, or disposition of an individual of a group of students according to Board 2009. Criteria for checklist. In planning for criteria will be used checklist. The criteria must be aligned with the outcomes that need to be observed and measured. Generally, criterion is defined as a standard that serves as a reference for judgment or decision. According to POCAM 1999, explained that when teachers set criteria, the main emphasis is to use this criteria in making judgment regarding the adequacy of a student response, and the criteria of will influence the way the response is scored. Checklists should be utilized because these make a quick and easy way to observe and record skills criteria and behavior prior to final test or summative evaluation. Provide an information to teachers if there are students who need help so as to avoid failing. C. Provide formative assessment of students' learning and help teacher monitor if students are on track with the desired outcomes.
So, good morning, everyone. I am the last reporter of Chapter 6, which is the rating scale. So, what is a rating scale? So, when we talk about rating scales, it is a measurement tool or a system used to assess and evaluate the performance. And according to Mitko in 2001, rating scales can be used for teaching purposes and assessment. And also, it helps to show each student's growth and progress. It helps students to understand the learning target or outcomes and to focus students' attentions to performance. And it also gives specific feedback to students as far as their strengths and weaknesses with respect to the target to which they are. I'll give you an example. So, example, rating scale, attitude toward mathematics. Direction, put a score in the column for each of the statement as it applies to you. Use 1 to 5, 1 being the lowest and 5 the highest possible score. So, for example, number 1, I am happy during mathematics class. So, if you're not very happy, you can put number 1. If you're just slightly happy, you can put number 2. It depends on you and how will you rate that kind of question or how will you score it. And then, now let's proceed to the type of rating scale. So, there are two most commonly used type of rating scale, which is the numerical rating scale. So, when we talk about numerical rating scale, of course, from the word numerical, it deals with numbers. But a numerical rating scale translates the judgment of quality or degree into numbers. A numerical rating scale, it has short verbal descriptions. Like, for example, kanina nga, example sa rating scales, it only deals with number. But this time, in numerical rating scale, it has a short verbal description. And then the second rating scale is the descriptive graphic rating scale. It replaces an ambiguous single word with short behavioral descriptions of various points along the scale. So from the word descriptive, it talks about word, like nag-describe, it describing. So wala siya nag-deal of numbers. And that's the difference between them. So let's proceed to the common rating scale errors. So there are 7 common rating scale errors, which is the first is leniency error. It tends to make almost all ratings toward the high end of the scale, avoiding the low end of the scale. While the severity error, it is the opposite of leniency error. The ratings towards the low end of the scale. While the central tendency error, it occurs when a teacher hesitates to use extremes and uses only the middle of part of the scale. While the halo effect, it occurs when a teacher lets his or her general impression of the students affect how she or he rates the students on specific dimension. And the next one is personal bias. From the word personal bias, of course, we are all familiar with it. It occurs when a teacher has a general tendency to use inappropriate or irrelevant stereotypes favoring boys over girls from or from rich families over from middle income families, or etc. And then logical error, it occurs when a teacher gives similar ratings to two or more dimensions that the teacher believes to be related, where in fact they are not related at all. And the last one, rater drift. It occurs when the raters whose ratings originally agreed begin to redefine the rubrics for themselves. And that's all the common rating scale errors that we need to avoid. The scoring of a Likert scale is based on assigning weights from 1 to 5 to each position of scales in using attitude scale. It is best to ask for anonymous responses and interpreting the result. And it is important to keep in mind that these are verbal expressions, feelings, and opinions that individuals are willing to import even under the most ideal condition. It is best to supplement result for self-report method with evidence from other sources. So for example, ano yung Likert scale is the evaluations of our instructor, 'di ba? Like we're 'di ba ang mga ano dito kay strongly agree, strongly disagree, and that is the example of Likert scale. One of the example of Likert scale. And then next is the semantic differential scale. So it is another common approach to measuring affective traits is to use various of semantic differential. So ang kalahian sa semantic differential scale sa descriptive rating scale is when we talk about descriptive, it is just a word describing or rating, while ang differential scale word Japon siya pero it is or adjective siya pero it is adjective pairs, while ang descriptive is adjective lang siya, while ang differential scale it is our adjective pairs that provide anchors for feelings or belief that are opposite in direction and intensity. And the last one is the sentence completion. The advantage of using the incomplete sentence format is that it captures whatever comes to mind from each student. Diba? Like we have the freedom to answer what we really want to answer without limitations. While the disadvantage for this is some of students faking their response, thinking that the teacher will notice their penmanship. Hence, students will tend to give answer favorable to the like response of the teacher. Another is scoring, which takes more time and is more subjective than the other traditional objective formats. So it takes a lot of time. And that's all. Thank you for listening, and I hope you learn from this chapter. Thank you.